Hello, scholars. We'll start with our do now today, which is centered around the question, where do food molecules come from? In your packet, I want you to answer the following questions. The first, what was the last thing you ate? Second, where did the matter that makes up your most recent meal come from? And third, where did the energy that makes up your most recent meal come from? For example, the last thing that I ate was mini powdered donuts. And the matter that made up those donuts, I know, came from wheat, that's where the flour comes from, and sugar cane, that's where the sugar comes from. And the energy that makes up my most recent meal, or the energy that was in that mini powdered donut, I think might come from the sugar. So when you get to that point, try to push yourself further. Where did that sugar come from? How did it get its energy? Today's lesson is 2.1.2, and it's called Photosynthesis Part 1. And today is Monday, September 28th of 2020. And we have two objectives today. The first objective is that Knights will be able to identify the reactants and products of photosynthesis. And the second is that Knights will be able to describe the uses of the products of photosynthesis. And I want to bring you back to our puzzling question for Unit 2. Why is the matter that enters our bodies different from the matter that leaves? It might seem like today's lesson has nothing to do with this, but when we get to part 2 of photosynthesis, we'll get a little bit closer to being able to answer this question. So first, let's talk about plants. Like all other organisms, plants are open systems. That means that it can exchange matter with its surroundings or with its environment, but it can also exchange energy with its surroundings or with its environment. So what exactly comes in and out of a plant? To try and answer that question, we're going to make observations of this video. As you watch, you can write down the things that you notice on a piece of paper or in your packet. And remember that an observation is anything that you can sense. So that means anything you can see, hear, smell, taste, or feel. When it comes to videos, really, we can only rely on sight and sound. But in this case, there is no sound, so you'll just be recording things that you notice as you watch. Okay, so for the sake of the video, we're going to stop right there. But if you want to watch the rest of the video, you can find it in the slides that are on Google Classroom. So some observations that you could have written down were that roots grew away from the seed, or that the leaves were kind of wiggling as they got bigger and bigger. But here's a question I want you to consider as you look back over your observations that you wrote down. How did the mass of the plant change? As we watched, the plant only got larger, which means that it's taking up more space. And that also means that it is increasing its mass. So when we watch this, I want you to think about the same question that we discussed when we talked about our own bodies. Where do the actual atoms come from? that are added on to the seed as it grows. Let's consider the matter and energy that goes into a plant as it grows. I want you to think about these two questions. What energy enters the plant as it grows? And the second, what matter enters the plant? Similarly, consider what leaves the plant as it grows. What matter leaves the plant? What atoms? And then what energy leaves the plant? So let's get into photosynthesis. As you thought about in your do now, pretty much all of the energy that we consume can be traced back to plants, and that's because of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is a process, and it's what plants use to get energy. It's, in fact, very extraordinary that plants are able to make their own food. There aren't really other organisms that can do that. Humans definitely can't. That's why we have to eat food in order to gain energy, while plants do not. So without photosynthesis, if photosynthesis did not exist, if it never developed, if it never evolved, then there would be no way for animals like us to exist because there would be no food on the planet. So during photosynthesis, a plant absorbs light energy from the sun and it transforms it into chemical energy in the form of sugars. We can't use energy from the sun, or our bodies cannot use energy from the sun, which is why we must eat. Specifically, we must harvest chemical energy. And plants are the organisms that supply all of that chemical energy. So during photosynthesis, several different forms of energy and matter are taken in by the plant. So the first is water. Water is matter. It's taken in through the roots of the plant. Then we have sunlight. Sunlight is energy, and that is absorbed through the leaves of the plant. And then the last one is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is absorbed also through the leaves of the plant. However, it is done through little holes in the surface of the leaf that are invisible to the naked human eye. But they open and close to allow air from the atmosphere to enter. And in the air, in the atmosphere, there is carbon dioxide. Plants will create glucose, and glucose is sugar. Its chemical formula is C6H12O6, and it is stored mostly in the leaves of the plant. And it will also create oxygen. Oxygen is a waste product. It's a byproduct. Basically, that means that it's just created as a result, as a consequence of photosynthesis, and the plant doesn't actually need it. And so the plant will just release it into the atmosphere. So photosynthesis is a chemical reaction, but it can't begin without a source of energy, and a very specific source of energy. And that energy is sunlight. That means that when sunlight is available, plants will convert the carbon dioxide and the water that it harvests from its environment into glucose and oxygen. However, when sunlight is not available, then plants will not be able to convert the carbon dioxide and the water. Here's the chemical formula, or the chemical equation, that represents photosynthesis. You'll notice in the reactants, we have sunlight, we have 6 molecules of carbon dioxide and 6 molecules of water. And in the products, we have just 1 molecule of glucose and then 6 molecules of oxygen. In this case, we actually do have energy on both sides of the reaction. On the left side, it's really obvious. In the reactants, it's sunlight. That's a very clear source of energy. But in the products, the energy is not so clear. In this case, it's chemical energy. We discussed last week the different types of food molecules. So here, the food molecule is glucose. Glucose is a carbohydrate. It follows the empirical formula that I showed you on Thursday. So the glucose is very useful to many organisms other than just humans because it's the form of chemical energy that we can't really find anywhere else. And then the oxygen is released into the atmosphere, and we can talk more about what that oxygen is used for in a couple of days. So that's the entire slideshow for your guided practice. You're going to read through several statements, determine if they're true or false, and to do so, you'll just highlight the T or the F. And then for your independent practice, you have 5 questions to answer, and you'll answer all of those in complete sentences. If you need any help or have any questions, please reach out to me via Hangouts, and I will respond as quickly as I can. So good luck, and I hope you have a great day.